Namaste, and welcome to our continuing series on the life divine with our beloved Ranga. Namaste. We are on page 280, beginning with the sentence, finally consciousness being thus omniscient.
Right. So, it's been 1 week since we studied this last. So, I'll tell you in brief what he said in the previous para. Then we will continue. So, what he is saying in the previous para, he is discussing, very often if we give ourselves a question, after reading the para, we try to see what's he talking about. Because he does not tell you, I am going to talk about this. Okay? But you have to make out. So, you have to give a question to yourself and say, what's he answering? So, this paragraph is this divinization of earthly life possible? That's what he is discussing. I am saying that it is possible, but how is it possible? To answer this question, we have to consider many things. This is what Srimli is saying. For the essential possibility to become dynamic potentiality, the supreme reality of Satchidananda has to descend into matter. What are the conditions that will allow this to happen? That is what he is discussing. Okay, so then he is saying, first of all the 7 or 8 principles that we have studied essential to earthly life, or can we manage with only some? That's the first question that arises. Is the lower hemisphere of matter, life and mind dependent on the higher hemisphere of Satchidananda, or can there be a divinization of matter without those elements? Okay. Is the universe self-existent, independent, needing no other principle to sustain it? Then, if it is dependent on Satchidananda, the universe, is the universe a figure, a representation of the spirit, or is it the spirit itself? This also we discussed. All these things we have to discuss. This last bit we remember, a photograph of New York and New York itself. There is a difference between the two. So, is the world a photograph of Satchidananda, a representation, an image of Satchidananda, or is it Satchidananda itself which has undergone a change? Okay? Then we come to that Indian discussion of Vivartavada and Parinamavada. Is the change real, or is it only a seeming real? That's a question that is discussed. But that's discussed in the Indian philosophy. Vivartavada and Parinamavada. Is the change, Satchidananda is becoming the physical world, is it apparent change or is it a real change? That's a question that has to be settled. So, then he says, when man enters into the cosmic consciousness, he discovers that the universe is both these things. It is a representation as well as a reality. In other words, what we are seeing is only representation. They are images. The chair, all of you with your bodies, there is no essential reality. That's what the Buddhist is saying, and that's what the Mayavada is saying. But they are saying it from the higher mind point of view or the spiritual point of view. You go one step higher and you will see that behind these forms, there is a reality supporting these forms. So, the world is real according to Sri Aurobindo, but he is not challenging the Buddhistic view. The Buddhistic view is right at its own level, but you go higher up, you will see that behind the form, the Buddhist is saying only the form and saying it is unreal. Right. But Sri Aurobindo is saying go higher up, behind the form you will see the reality.
And was this why Mother was very generous in her talks about Buddhism?
Maybe, I don't know, because she was into Buddhism quite early, and she had a lot of commentaries also on the Dhammapada and all. So she was interested in Buddhism, but that's not the ultimate reality.
She even received a communication from Buddha.
Yeah.
She even received a communication from Buddha.
Yes.
It's there in the prayers and meditations.
So I think she saw exactly this, that Sri Aurobindo says.
Of course she knew.
It is true
Yeah.
on that level.
Yes. The world is not what you are seeing it to be. So when you go to the spiritual plane of consciousness, you see that the world is not what you are seeing. It is only an image. So that's true. But you go higher up, behind the image there is the reality. Okay? So, now he is discussing, I am saying that the supermind will divinize the earth. What are the, it has not done so yet. So what are the conditions which will allow it to do that? There is the discussion between that essential possibility and dynamic, what is the word he uses? Essential possibility to become dynamic potentiality. So, the dynamic potentiality can be when you make the supermind come down here into matter, number one. Number two, man has to change his consciousness also. If these two things happen, then a divinization of matter is possible.
But thus far, one has happened.
Yes, that's right. So now it's a dynamic potentiality. It's not merely a essential possibility. It's not. It's now a dynamic potentiality. It's going to happen, but not yet fully apparent. But it's gone one step. So many steps are there. So the first step has been taken. The second step has to become a reality. So this is what finally he has discussed in that last paragraph. Okay, so now Swami is saying, in the previous para, when man enters into the cosmic consciousness, he discovers that the universe is both these things, a figure as well as the spirit itself. The cosmos is an expression of the supreme reality as well as a spirit itself. It's an expression, an image, a representation as well as the spirit itself. He has come to that point. So now we read the next para. Finally, consciousness being thus omniscient and omnipotent in entire luminous possession of itself, and such entire luminous possession being necessarily and in its very nature bliss, for it cannot be anything else, a vast universal self-delight must be the cause, essence, and object of cosmic existence. If there were not, says the ancient seer, this all-encompassing ether of delight of existence in which we dwell, if that delight were not our ether, then none could breathe, none could live. This self-bliss may become subconscious, seemingly lost on the surface, but not only must it be there at our roots, all existence must be essentially a seeking and reaching out to discover and possess it. And in proportion as a creature in the cosmos finds himself, whether in will and power, or in light and knowledge, or in being and wideness, or in love and joy itself, he must awaken to something of the secret ecstasy, joy of being, delight of realization by knowledge, rapture of possession by will, and power or creative force, ecstasy of union in love and joy are the highest terms of expanding life, because they are the essence of existence itself in its hidden roots, as on its yet unseen heights. So, wherever then cosmic existence manifests itself, these three must be behind and within it. He is replying himself to the question which he raised: does Satchidananda, the upper hemisphere, is it essential for the lower to become the higher? For the lower hemisphere of body, mind, life to become divine, are those three essential, or can we dispose them off? So he is answering, they are very much there. They are connected. You can't get rid of them. They have to come in. That's what he is answering very clearly. Whenever...
Because they are involved already.
Yes, they are already involved and it is there. So only they have to be transformed. Their limitations have to be removed and they have to be uncovered. Okay? So that's the first question he is answering. Then he is talking about consciousness. Now he comes to the infinite existence. Now, so by the way, that thing about the quotation that he has given here, then none could breathe, none could live. It's from the Taittiriya Upanishad. I don't exactly remember the shloka, the number.
I remember the shloka.
Yeah.
Ko hevanyat kah pranyat yadesha akasha anando nasyat.
Yes, that's right. This is I can easily find it in the text, but I don't remember the shloka and the book. But this is the Taittiriya Upanishad. If Ananda were not there, then nothing could live or nothing could exist. Even what you are seeing as the Ananda, when it comes down, becomes pleasure, pain and indifference. But even pain is a form of Ananda. That's because it's a whole range, the whole gamut is produced. So one side you have pain and you have pleasure. But it's a form of Ananda only. Just like darkness is a form of light. Because the light, when it diminishes and dilutes itself, it becomes the darkness.
But it's still light.
It is still light, essentially. Okay, so that's what he's saying. So now we come to the next.
But in this paragraph, it doesn't mention existence.
Huh?
In the paragraph we have just read,
Huh?
I can't see him mentioning existence. He's just mentioning in the first sentence
Consciousness.
and then delight.
Yes.
But where is the mention of existence for him to be able to say these three?
Then he would have to say Satchit Ananda also. But when he's talking of consciousness, he's not talking of force either. Nah? So he's taking one.
But for sure we can take that these three must be behind means Satchidananda.
Yes. You remind me of an interesting thing I had in my class. Okay, in the very first paragraph of the Life Divine, the very first chapter, he says, you remember, he says, the idea of God, light, freedom, immortality keeps coming back again and again. One of the children asked me, why is he excluding love? So this is similar to what you are saying. Okay? So he has to talk of all that together at the same time. So, in fact, she was so dissatisfied, she left the class and went away after that. She wanted love also to be there. But when
Love comes, but not in the name of love, in the name of bliss.
Yes.
In the same chapter.
So, that is... So, when he says consciousness, he's talking... Because in the previous paragraph, I already told you that are all these three higher hemisphere essential to the divinization of matter? Then he says, yes, it is. It has to be there. So,
but here he does say rapture of possession by will.
Will is the force, yeah. So omniscient and omnipotence in entire luminous possession of itself, such entire luminous possession being necessarily and in its very nature bliss, for it cannot be anything else, a vast universal self-delight must be the cause, essence and object of cosmic existence.
But it's not capital E.
So he comes back. Okay, so all right. So we go to the next para. But infinite existence, consciousness, and bliss need not throw themselves out into apparent being at all. Or doing so, it would not be cosmic being, but simply an infinity of figures without fixed order or relation. And if they did not hold or develop and bring out from themselves this fourth term of supermind, of the divine gnosis. Now, he's saying, for this Satchidananda to manifest, it needs an instrumentation of manifestation, and that instrumentation is supermind. Without supermind, the Satchidananda will remain unmanifest. So supermind is the one that is the creator of the universe. If supermind is eliminated, there will be no universe.
How then did the great seers understand the creation of the universe without knowing of the supermind.
Without?
Knowing about the supermind.
They knew about
Oh, but it is there.
They knew something about
it.
it.
They knew about it.
Yeah.
He says this knowledge was there in the seed form.
Yeah.
In the
Seed
Veda.
form. Seed form.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it is like the white light, which remains white, but it has got all the colors. It's got the multiplicity in it. But it has to hit the prism to express all its colors. So the supermind could be considered like the prism that makes this white Satchidananda into the multiplicity of various colors here in the physical world.
In fact, Sri Aurobindo has paid his homage sort of to the Vedic rishis by taking the term, he uses the word supermind initially, and then he says that this may be ambiguous. So he says we need another term, and he says for that we take it from the Vedic rishis. The word is Rita Chit, which he translates into English as truth consciousness.
Yes.
And I think this Rita Chit is from the Rig Veda.
Yes, yes,
And he
absolutely.
often uses the term truth consciousness.
Yes.
Hyphenated.
Yes.
Which is the English translation of the Vedic term.
That's right, Rita Chit.
Constantly the Vedic term to which he is referring throughout his literature.
Very good.
But he doesn't stop there. He goes one more step and he says, we will call it gnosis. Because he is dealing with English, so he prefers the word gnosis and truth consciousness to supermind. He doesn't like the word supermind because the supermind can be misinterpreted. Either it can be taken as the absolute highest, or it can be taken as just one step above the mind, supermind.
But we also had the defamation by Nietzsche of the Superman
Yes.
also.
Yeah, but that Srirendra doesn't agree at all with that.
Which is why he wrote that essay, The Superman in the Arya.
Yes, yes.
To correct that.
Because
Correct that.
the idea of Nietzsche in Superman is an aggrandized man, basically.
Yes.
He speaks of the camel man, the lion man, so he's an aggrandized. That means the ego would be, you have the right to lord it over others. That he does not like. He says that we have had enough of those type of Superman in the past. It has to be someone without an ego, without this sense of superiority. That's why he calls Nietzsche a blind seer. He is a seer.
Yes.
He has seen the truth, but he has misinterpreted it, and so he is a blind seer. So they're so fond of these oxymorons.
Camel and lion thing which you are saying, there is even an aphorism. One aphorism in which he has mentioned these terms. Where
Yeah.
he clarifies.
These terms are used by Nietzsche
So
himself.
he has taken it from there and he has, sort of tried to
Yeah,
correct it.
yeah. So the Superman in Nietzsche is very different from Superman in Srirendra.
Agatha, can you please explain what it means by cosmic being? And I understand that the word cosmos means order and it is the opposite of the word chaos, which means no order. But I can't really understand what he means when he says cosmic being versus infinity of figures without fixed order or relation. If you can expound on this a little.
I will discuss that. Okay, so suppose I think the discussion what he's saying is that there is a substance and that substance has to manifest. If there is only consciousness, okay, but no power, it will not be able to manifest itself. It needs power to manifest itself. Now, if there is only power and no consciousness to guide it, then it will be a chaotic creation. Because force will go on creating. It has the power to create. But there is no intention in it, there is no purpose in it. So it will be a chaotic creation. So both have to be there for a meaningful creation. There has to be consciousness and there has to be also force. This is what the supermind is. Okay, so that's what.
So more than 50 years ago, Mother tells us that if man doesn't change, it might be under crashing circumstances.
Yes.
In those 50 years, do you feel the supermental has changed anything?
I don't know if man has really. And then she said afterwards that after man, there will be a middle an intermediate term.
Surom.
Yeah, the Surom. So that phenomenon is probably already starting. You can see that in these children. Yeah, that's right. In the children. Fantastic. And not only in the children. There are some beings who are, in Russia there is a young boy who says he has come from another plane of consciousness. So there are fantastic things going on. And the children, but that's another thing. The children, they are exhibiting aggrandized powers of the human being.
True.
They are not showing spiritual.
Very true. And that's a good point. That's
Yes.
an important point. These indigo children,
Yes.
they are aggrandized powers of the human being.
That's right. There is no yet spiritual content in them. But there are some here and there. As I said, in Russia there is one who says that he has come from another world. But all these, we have many cases. We have these America has talent, Britain has talent, India has talent, all these YouTubes are there. And you see these small children. They remember 200 nations, their capitals, their population. But this is just memory.
And it's the mind. Normally.
It's a mind.
Yes.
But still it's fantastic. No adult has been able to do that yet.
What gets me is the ones who can play piano at 5 years of age.
Then in America, there's a Bengali boy. Okay, when he was 6 months old, he started speaking, and then he became a professor in a college, teaching higher mathematics and all at the age of 9. There is a video of that. You remember that? What's his name?
Isaac Newton Bari.
Huh?
His name is Subroto Isaac Newton Bari.
Yeah. Then, but they could not. In America, they couldn't pronounce the name. So they said, please introduce another word which is possible for us to pronounce. So Isaac was added to that name. So these are extraordinary children. But that's not what Srimdev is saying. It is not a quantitative improvement. It's a qualitative improvement. That's the difference between Nietzsche and Srimdev.
One more question, Ranganath. One more question since what Narad mentioned. See, if you open the television, there are at least 15 channels which are spiritual, purely dedicated to spiritual. And it may be more depending on how many you subscribe. And in general, we see that spirituality, at least, in name at least, is becoming popular. There are so many people who are peddling it, let's say.
Yes.
So, okay, some of them may not be as genuine as we expect people to be. Some of them may be partly genuine, but is this also not a clear sign that, No? Okay.
Sign maybe, but not a single of those channels is speaking about the Supermind or...
I'm saying just this interest in spirituality increasing.
Yes.
And increasing in such a big way.
Maybe the word would be seeking.
Okay.
Two possibilities. Anmol, two possibilities. One was maybe that all this was already there, interest. But because of the media, now you are coming to know about it. Okay? Otherwise, it is possible that people were having experiences all over the world. But we didn't know about it. But now because of the media and the internet and the connectedness everywhere, that's happening. So
You said there were two things. That was one. What was the other?
The other is the possibility that really it is increasing. Yeah. The first is that you come to know that it is there, and the other is that really it is increasing. In fact, I feel that yes, there is an awakening that is happening, particularly in India, because we have been subjugated for 200, 300 years, and we have been forced to forget our own culture and our own past history. So all that is now trying to come back. But the Western influence is very strong, and particularly from the British and the Germans and all. They have given all sorts of theories here which are absolutely, completely wrong. And our history is full of Mughals. What about the Chalukyas? What about the Pandyans? What about the Vijayanagar Empire? We have forgotten completely all these things. History is completely distorted in India. And you will see there are two channels. One is David Frawley. You have heard of David Frawley? Oh, he's a very awakened man. And there's another man also. They say that all the ideas that are there in the West are all stolen from, and the Westerners were saying that, okay, from India. So, when it comes to plagiarism, then they will hold India, they will say that you are doing wrong. But when they borrow these old ideas, okay, that's not plagiarism. It's part of their own. So, slowly this assertion and this confidence is slowly coming back in India. So, that's one of the signs where spirituality also is becoming more and more obvious.
Reckham, George Van Reckham, and I'll stop after saying this. There is an aphorism of Sri Aurobindo in the Arya, that which has been later printed as Thoughts and Glimpses, that all these revolutions which you are seeing now, political, social, cultural, etc., you will not find the meaning of them until the real revolution, which is the spiritual, it shows itself.
Yeah.
And Reckham, in several of his books, Patterns of the Present, Over Man, New Spirituality, etc., he says that we are right in the middle of this spiritual revolution.
Yes.
And in the Patterns of the Present, he tries to trace whatever his historical, judgment capacities are from 56 onwards. That immediately what were some of the signs, like the youth unrest in America, he says was one of the things which happened. Then in 67, he says something happened in France. He even mentions a date. It's a very important date, 1st May or something in 1967. There was basically a lot of unrest, and he attributes this all to the working of the new force which came in 56.
That attributing
I feel that this is why the resistance is so prominent.
Yes.
Also.
That's true, because every time you introduce a new rule or a new idea, there is always resistance in the physical world. Even science admits that. To every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. So it's bound to happen. Okay, so let's come back to our... So because we've lost the track, but I'm reading from the beginning. But infinite existence, consciousness and bliss need not throw themselves out into apparent being at all. Throw themselves into apparent being at all? Manifest. Okay? Need not manifest. Or, doing so, it would not be cosmic being, it would not be the universe, which is very, very orderly and there is meaning in it, but simply an infinity of figures without fixed order or relation, if they did not hold or develop and bring out from themselves this fourth term of supermind or the divine gnosis. So, he's saying if the supermind is not there, which is a combination of consciousness and force, then there will be a chaotic, there need not be any cosmos at all. There need not be any expression, or if there is an expression, it will not be the universe that you see it to be. It will be a chaos. And I understand that in this way, that if consciousness alone is there without the force, then there can be no manifestation. You need force to manifest. And if only force is there without consciousness to guide it, it will go on producing pell-mell chaotically. So there has to be both. And that is the supermind.
So it is a combination of consciousness and force.
And Chit Shakti also. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Okay, so he'll introduce that now. He will introduce that.
So basically it is a supermind which brings order and relation.
Yes, which manifests the universe meaningfully.
It's so amazing. I mean, this sentence is explaining that why the supermind is necessary at all.
Yes.
I mean, it is one of
That's
the most
right.
important sentences.
That's right. So, as I told you, white light can break up into 7 colors only if there is a prism. So the prism is the supermind, manifesting that white light and allowing the multiplicity of the universe meaningfully. Okay, so we go back now to the fourth term, supermind, or the divine gnosis. Now note here, he is using the word divine gnosis, okay? He has explained once why he doesn't like the word supermind. Sometimes he does use the word, but he means essentially truth, consciousness and divine. There must be in every cosmos a power of knowledge and will. Okay, knowledge and will, 2 other words only for knowledge, consciousness, and will, force, Shakti. Okay, which out of infinite potentiality fixes determined relations, develops the result out of the seed, rolls out the mighty rhythms of cosmic law, and views and governs the worlds as their immortal and infinite seer and ruler. Okay? In other words, it produces systematically, and there is a purpose and a meaning and an order to what it is producing. Okay? And this is he is quoting from the Isha Upanishad, the infinite seer and ruler. They have given the seer, the thinker who becomes everywhere, the self-existent. You remember the Sanskrit sloka?
Kavihi Manishih Paribhu Swayambhu.
Yeah, that's right.
So is he saying that this infinite seer and ruler is the supermind?
Pardon?
Is he saying that this seer and ruler
Oh.
is the supermind?
Yeah, you could say that. The seer and thinker who becomes everywhere the self-existent. I don't think he's saying that necessarily.
I think it's the divine. He's speaking of the divine here.
The seer, the thinker.
See, what is this power of knowledge and will which fixes determined relations?
Yeah.
This power of knowledge and will is the supermind only, which is mentioned in the previous sentence.
Yes, that's right. Knowledge is consciousness and will is Shakti.
And this power of knowledge and will is what is governing the worlds as their immortal and infinite seer
Yes,
and ruler.
this order that is possible, it is governing it. It creates, in fact, he uses this everywhere else also. Here we'll again look at the words, but you conceive, execute and govern. He uses these words. The supermind conceives what is going to produce, executes it and governs it.
No, I think the seer and ruler, it's Sachidananda, no? Not Supermind.
It is the supermind, na? Seer and ruler.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, on page 145, he says the same thing, where he calls the Ishvara of the Gita, who is seated in the heart of everything. He says that it is the supermind which has become this Ishvara, and in the second part of that statement, he quotes the same words from the Isha Upanishad. It is within them and embraces them as the divine seer. So it looks like the same thing.
Yeah. The seer is one who has got consciousness. Okay, obviously. Okay. So, infinite seer and ruler. This power, indeed, is nothing else than Sachidananda himself. Now he is using Sachidananda himself. He is bringing in the Ishvara consciousness. He is bringing in the personal aspect of the divine. Yes. Whereas the Sachidananda can be considered impersonal.
See,
Yes.
that's the difference.
He is bringing in the personal aspect of the divine. He is saying this purposely because in the spiritual planes of consciousness, normally, you don't see the personal aspect. You see only the impersonal aspect, the self. Okay? You have then Buddhists and all these Mayavadins and the Advaitins also, they experience a vastness, a peace, a state of Ananda also, but no person.
Which is why they declare bhaktas to be sentimental weaklings.
Yes, that's right. So here very clearly, Sachidananda himself,
Capital H.
capital H. So the personal aspect of the divine. That's why in the Gita you have the Purushottama, Uttama Purusha. But you have in Srimdos, Ishvara, Master and Lord. So those who say that there is no God, okay, there are many who say that. Okay, they are only experiencing the spiritual planes of consciousness. They have not gone to the supermind. And note interestingly that you can have the personal aspect of the divine through bhakti yoga. But that's not the Ishvara. The Ishvara is the one who is personal as well as impersonal. And that's only at the supramental level.
Which is why Sri Aurobindo says in
Yeah.
the essays on the Gita that the order inevitably has to be first the perfection of the karma, then the jnana, and then the bhakti. If the bhakti comes before the jnana and karma, then it's going to be...
It doesn't come. Yeah.
It doesn't come.
That's what happened in the life of Ramakrishna. Okay? He had an intimate relation with the divine. He is seeing his mother, but that was the only thing. He was limited only to the mother, the personal aspect of the divine. He did not have any aspect of the impersonal aspect of the divine. So that...
Which is why, in the agenda there is this unbelievable conversation, sorry to interrupt you, but where mother says, I know all these people thoroughly. She's being asked about Ram Das. who had just 63, he had passed away, he was still alive probably when that conversation was happening. She says, I know these people very well. She mentions 3 names, Ramakrishna, Chaitanya and Ramdas. And she says they are very clear in their feelings, but that's about it.
Yeah.
They do not have a clear ideas.
Yeah.
And then she says this crystal clear vision of Sri Aurobindo. She says they never reached there.
Absolutely,
It
absolutely.
is so concrete and it makes your own mind so clear when you read that.
And that's why even now these spiritual planes of consciousness is common, and the channels that you're talking about, there's a lot of spirituality going on. Okay, Sadguru and Amritanandamayi Ma and all. None of them speak of the supermind or the transformation of mankind. No, none of them. Sri Aurobindo is unique. Just to tell you how unique, I'll just tell you one story which maybe you know. Okay, Sai Baba of Puttaparthi. Okay, when he was a young boy, he had certain openings to the vital world, and he had certain powers. He could materialize things. People doubt, but that's not true. He could really do it. He had powers.
This was the original Sai Baba.
Yeah. No, not the original. The second fellow with that crazy hair.
The curly hair.
Oh, Satya Sai Baba.
Yeah.
No. Ha, yes, Satya Sai Baba. Yes.
Ah,
Okay. Not the original. Original one was genuine. Okay. But this chap was only up to the vital level. So one of our people had gone. Okay. It was a Aurovillian who had gone there, and he went to him. And Sai Baba asked him, from where have you come? He says, I have come from Pondicherry Sri Aurobindo Ashram. Oh, you have come from Sri Aurobindo Ashram? You have come from the sun. I am only a candle.
yes, I know that story. He says, actually, I remember, he says, no, this was the story of Dr. Sanyal. Dr. Sanyal goes to America because he has Parkinson's.
Yeah, that's right.
And in those days, they were drilling into the skull to cure it. He didn't cure it.
Yeah.
And
So-
he says, and he goes around to all the gurus in India asking if they can heal him. And he comes to Sai Baba, and Sai Baba says to him, I have to try to remember it exactly. Why do you come to, and I can't get that word, when you have the sun?
Yeah.
1,000-watt bulb or something like that.
Yeah, when do you come to a 40-watt bulb? That's it. Why do you come to a 40-watt bulb when you have the sun?
Yeah. I remember it as a candle, okay? So, but anyway, this is what, and when this was reported to mother also about what is Sai Baba's, she said, he is not useful to our work. He has got his own. Thousands used to go to him, and that Puttaparthi. Okay, thousands every day, thousands used to go to him. But he is only making you aware that there is something more than the physical world. That's about all. Nobody, even today, Sadguru or Amritanandamayi Ma, okay, they are extraordinary in their own field. But no idea at all of the supermind.
Even those gurus in the public sphere who take the name of Sri Aurobindo, they never open their mouth on Supermind.
They don't know what Sri Aurobindo is. He is absolutely, that's why he is not popular. Because what he is saying is something so extraordinary that is not easy to understand. He is not for everybody. Even the integral path is not for everybody. So many he has to reject. He says, you are not ready yet. Go back. You are not ready. The others will be very happy to have disciples. But but he is actually turning them away and saying, prepare yourself.
Very good point.
Okay, so let's get back to our text. So
He would say to many of them, wait a little while, get more life experience.
Yes.
Then come back.
that's
here."
right.
He made Aurobindo Basu wait 16 years
Yes.
before they let him come
Yeah.
to reside in the... And here, this was a great yogi.
Yes. Okay, so he's saying, there must be in every cosmos a power of knowledge and will, consciousness and Shakti, which out of infinite potentiality fixes determined relations, develops the result out of the seed, rolls out the mighty rhythms of cosmic law, and views and governs the worlds as their immortal and infinite seer and ruler. Note the word seer and ruler is like a king who is governing his kingdom. It's not something natural and something like only the impersonal aspect of the divine. It's a personal aspect of the divine. So, this power indeed is nothing else than Satchidananda himself. Okay? It creates nothing which is not in its own self-existence. There you are, self-existence. Okay? And for that reason, all cosmic and real law is a thing not imposed from outside, but from within. All development is self-development. All seed and result are seed of a truth of things and result of that seed determined out of its potentialities. He has used very philosophic language here, but in another place he says, God creates the world. In another place he uses it. Or should we not say, expresses himself. So, because what he is creating is not something that did not exist before. It's already there within him, he is only expressing it. So that's what he's saying here. It is what is there inside him, the seed, he is bringing it out. Okay. So this power indeed is nothing else than Satchidananda himself. It creates nothing which is not its own self-existence. It's already there in him. And for that reason, all cosmic and real law is a thing not imposed from outside, but from within. All development is self-development. All seed and result are seed of a truth of things, and result of that seed determined out of its potentialities. For the same reason, no law is absolute, because only the infinite is absolute. And everything contains within itself endless potentialities, quite beyond its determined form and course, which are only determined through a self-limitation by idea I cap, proceeding from an infinite liberty within. Okay, so again the idea is you have to understand it as a blueprint. Okay, the conception first. The idea is there, then it gets executed. So whatever is the idea, it gets executed.
Why does he call the real idea the supermind?
Because if you contrast it with the ideas in our mind, then you will understand the real mind. Okay? I have an idea in my mind. I want to become an engineer. It may become a fact, it may not become a fact. And even if it becomes a fact, I need 5 years to undergo the course. But there, immediately and real it becomes. There is no diversion. That's why real idea.
He says here, no law is absolute.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'll tell you why. That's interesting. The law of gravitation is absolute? No. You go up 100 meters, 100 miles up, no law. Okay? The law of gravitation is not absolute either for the yogi. He can change. It's only a habit of nature. Srimdo says all laws are only habits of nature.
There is an essay in the Karma Yogin, I believe, where he says that the Hatha Yogi conquers the law of gravitation through Kumbhak.
Yeah.
So, if you develop that full Kumbhak, it's there in his writings.
Yeah.
Then that levitation can happen.
Yeah.
He explains how it is done.
That's right. So all laws are only the ordered execution of what is there already within itself. That's what a law is. Law is not something imposed on you. In our world, physical world, law and freedom are opposites. When there is a law, it limits your freedom. But that's the reason why at the physical level, there is total law. Everything is fixed. In the material world, absolute fixation. No freedom at all. As I like to put it, I can forecast an eclipse, a lunar eclipse or a solar eclipse. 100 years from now, I can say exactly on this day at this time. Why? Because there is a law. There is no freedom. It's a set pattern. But as you keep going up in higher and consciousness, the fixity of laws goes on becoming more and more subtle, more and more subtle, more and more subtle. And when you reach the higher levels of consciousness, freedom comes in and you are not bound by any law anymore. That's liberation. Even in the physical world, it's like that. The law of gravitation pulls you down. There's nothing you can do about it. Go up, you're free, you float. So this is a symbol of the spiritual truth also. Sri Aurobindo says that everything in the physical world is a symbol. So this also is a symbol of freedom. You go up 100 miles, maybe 100 a little more, you start floating. The law of gravitation doesn't operate anymore. Okay, so so that's what he's saying. No law is absolute. Okay, so then by through self-limitation by idea, proceeding from an infinite liberty within. So this needs a little bit of a mentioning. We have discussed it many times before. Okay, which are only determined through a self-limitation by idea, proceeding from an infinite liberty within. The supermind has got infinite liberty and it manifests itself through self-made laws and by limiting itself. All manifestation is a limitation. And limitation and apparent diminution and slight distortion. These are the laws that operate when you are manifesting something. We normally use that fantastic example of the clay and the potter. I have a huge amount of clay, infinite clay. Okay, pots and pans are inherent in it, but they are not manifested yet. So what do I need to manifest? The potentiality of the pot and the pan in the clay. I limit it. I take a little bit and give it a shape. Now it gets manifested. So manifestation implies limitation. That's why when the supermind manifests the infinite, it has to necessarily take finite forms. And finite forms means necessarily limitation. And limitation means imperfection. How can the limited be perfect?
And yet, Sri Aurobindo in Savitri says he wanted to create a perfect perfection.
Yes, because there is a grade, graded, there is a gradation. So I was telling you about this one. He's saying, determined through a self-limitation. Self-limitation, the diminution. First there is an idea proceeding from an infinite liberty within. This power of self-limitation is necessarily inherent in the boundless all-existent. Okay? So, the all-existent is the... he is not saying here, but he is using the word all-existent. So, he is not saying only the existent. He is saying the all-existent. The all-existent, one day we discussed this, the existent and the existence. Okay? The existent is the personal aspect. But the all-existent would be impersonal personal.
Okay. Very true. Very true.
Yeah.
Very true.
The all-existent would be the personal, which refers to the supermind again. Only the supermind is the personal and the impersonal aspect. So, all-existent means that. Okay. The infinite would not be the infinite if it could not assume a manifold finiteness. The infinite must have the capacity to become something limited. Okay, because as it says, if you say that the divine is only omnipresence and omniscience, you are limiting him. So when you are trying to praise him and give him all full powers, you are limiting him. Your conception of the divine as omnipresent, omniscient and omnipotent is not the right one. Because he has the power to limit himself and become the opposite of what he is himself.
Very true.
No, that conception is wrong if we deny him the power of self-limitation.
That's right. So, the idea that he is only at the higher level and he cannot come down to the lower level is a human conception which is wrong. Okay, so this power of self-limitation is necessarily inherent in the boundless all-existent. the infinite would not be the infinite if it could not assume a manifold finiteness. The absolute would not be the absolute if it were denied in knowledge and power and will and manifestation of being, a boundless capacity of self-determination. This supermind then is the truth or real idea. Okay, so he is saying the truth or the real idea, inherent in all cosmic force and existence, which is necessary, itself remaining infinite, to determine and combine and uphold relation and order and the great lines of the manifestation. The great lines of the manifestation, all the possibilities, but in absolute with laws and with method and purpose. Okay, so that's it. To determine and combine and uphold relation and order and the great lines of its manifestation. In the language of the Vedic rishis, as infinite existence, consciousness and bliss are the three highest and hidden names of the nameless, so the supermind is the fourth name. So, to that in its descent, fourth to us in its ascension. So, Sat, Chit, Ananda, supermind, the Sanskrit word used normally is Vijnana, okay, and you have mind, life, matter. The 7 planes of consciousness, and the chapter is the sevenfold chord of being. So he is telling you where the supermind is. It's right there, 3 above, 3 below. It's a connecting link between the higher hemisphere and the lower hemisphere. And it is the supermind that makes possible the manifestation of the higher into the lower. Okay?
He has a footnote.
Pardon? Yeah, the footnote is the fourth name. They call it the Turiya Svid. Okay? Yeah, a Turiyam Svid, a certain fourth. Also called the Turiyam Dhamma. Dhamma means a plane of consciousness or a home or a stage. That's what Dhamma means. The fourth, placing or poise of existence. So, one paragraph again, but so much packed into that one paragraph.
Great evening. Thank you.
Now, he has spoken about the Satchidananda. Now, he'll be next in the lower, the mind, life, matter. What is mind, life, matter to do to allow the supermind to come down and divinize life on earth? That's what he will discuss. If you go back 3 paragraphs earlier, he says, before we can consider the psychological and practical aspects of the supermind, which he does in the last chapter, he will tell you what happens when the supermind will descend. So, before that, we have much to consider, he says, if you remember the words. Okay? And we have to see what are the possibilities, what is the essential possibility has to become dynamic potentiality. So, 2 things are there. Supermind has to descend, and the physical here must be, man must become spiritualized. These 2 possibilities, then only a divinization of matter is possible. Otherwise, no. Okay, I think we stop here today.
Thank you.